Good evening, everyone. I'm Lieutenant Shane Foley with the IMPD Public Affairs Office. I want to thank everyone for joining us this town hall for East District. Before we get started, I want to take a point of personal privilege and thank the members of our community who have reached out after last night to show their support for our agency and our officers and their families. I spoke with a couple officers last night who shared with me something that I wanted to share with you, and that was that in moments like this where we have an officer who is shot and the incredible adversity that we're facing, the one thing those officers said they wanted to do was put their uniform on and go out and take runs. I think that just it's an example of the resolve that our officers have. So thank you for indulging me in that. And again, welcome everyone to this town hall for East District. What we're going to do tonight is Chief Taylor is going to give an introduction, and then he's going to pass it on to Commander Riddle, East District's Commander Riddle. He's going to give a brief presentation, and then we'll have an opportunity for questions and answers. If you have any questions, feel free to put those in the chat, and we will address as many of those as possible. So with that, we'll pass on to the Chief for some introduction. Chief?
Well, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us for this is the at least attempted third of our district city hall type events. They've all been virtual, and I think we'll plan on keeping that that way for now. The reason behind that is because in the previous one or two, we've had pretty good turnout. And I think part of that is because it's easy to, at least relatively easy to jump on these calls. You don't have to travel and find parking and all those kind of things. And really the goal in this is to make us accessible to you in the easiest way possible. So I will tell you, this is year 2 of being chief of the department, and I am very pleased with the men and women that work for you on each of the districts. East District is led by a fantastic commander and staff there, and you're very fortunate if you live in the East District to have those men and women working for you. But as just a little bit of insight, this year we are down a little bit on our homicides, which is always a good thing. Not where I want it to be, but I think today we're probably down maybe 10 or so, which is a good start. I think a lot of that has to do with the makeup of the different districts and the things the men and women that are wearing the uniform and those that are in investigations are doing for the city and trying to combat crime, try to get the bad players off the street and get them dealt with. Also, I will echo what Lieutenant Foley said. I've got some great feedback from the community as far as our officer is concerned, people praying for him and his family, and the concern for the officers across the board. Really, that certainly makes us feel good. It makes me feel good because I know Indianapolis is a fantastic city with very good people in it. But unfortunately, as we learned last night, there's people who are willing to strike out against officers. And of course, our concern is if you're willing to strike out against an officer, you're probably willing to strike out against day-to-day citizens. And obviously, we can't have that. So we will be here for questions. Some of my executive staff is on here as well. So I will be passing it over to Commander Richard Riddle, and he will give you the presentation, but we will stay on for the duration as long as you have questions and do our best to answer those questions. So Commander Riddle.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate the kind words, and obviously East District's near and dear to our heart. A couple of years ago, we're not immune to tragedy either when we lost Officer Brianne Leeds. So from East District to Southeast District, our brothers and sisters down there, our thoughts and prayers are with you. We were right there, right beside you last night during this incident, and we will be right there, right beside you tonight and moving forward as this investigation unfolds. So again, my name is Commander Richard Riddle. I'm currently the East District Commander for IMPD. I've been in place now. I'm going into my third year. In all honesty, it's been kind of a blur with the COVID pandemic and not having as much public interactions as we should, but unfortunately, some of the COVID restrictions that were put in place for the safety and protection of not only our officers, but our community has prevented that. So I'm going to take a few minutes to go through a PowerPoint presentation. I was asked to keep it fairly brief, but a nice overview of what we're trying to accomplish here on East District and what we accomplished last year. And then we'll take the time to open it up for questions, because that's really what this is about, is making sure that we're interacting with the community and our constituents on a continual basis. So I'm going to share a PowerPoint presentation real quick. Let me make sure I can wade through the technology and we'll get going. So I'm waiting on this to publish. Hopefully everybody can see that. Once again, this is the East District Virtual Town Hall. My name is Commander Richard Riddle. East District is located at 201 North Shadeland Avenue, and our main number is listed there on the screen for everybody to look at. I apologize. It's got a little bit of a lag on my screen, but I'll try to click through these as quickly as I can. Tonight's agenda, I'm going to give you an overview of East District. So I'm going to discuss some of the crime trends that we have seen here on East District, some of the accomplishments we had last year. I'm very proud of our East District officers for last year. Really look forward to what we can accomplish next year, or excuse me, this year. So we're going to talk about our 2022 priorities and initiatives. And then, like I said before, we are going to open this up for questions from our community. So here you see the overview of East District. This is the new beat boundaries for East District that went into effect July of 2020. I'd like to give everybody a little bit of perspective about East District. We run to the east of downtown Indianapolis. We run along Washington Street for the most part to the east. Where East District and Southeast District come together at Washington and Emerson. We then go south, and then we run all the way down Brookville Road to the county line. On the east side, we handle all the runs remaining in the county all the way to Carroll Road. And we bump up against Lawrence jurisdiction up there around 42nd and Midhofer, 42nd and German Church, and 42nd and Post. They take everything on the north side of 42nd Street, and IMPD East District takes everything on the south of 42nd Street. I will say that we enjoy a great working relationship with Lawrence PD. Happy to welcome their new chief, Gary Woodruff. I know Gary very well, and he is a fantastic partner of ours. We go down Pendleton Pike to the south to around Shadeland, and then we go north up Shadeland Avenue to around 46th Street. Where that connector of Shadeland and 465 goes in. And then we run down Emerson Avenue towards 34th Street. So it's actually a large district. I thought, in order to put this in perspective, I did a little research today. East District is a little bit over 52 square miles, and we have close to 150,000 residents that live on East District alone. By sheer population, East District, IMPD East District would be the fourth largest city in Indianapolis as far as population, if we were to judge East District on population in the state of Indiana, excuse me. Interestingly enough, East District is larger than the city of Boston's police jurisdiction. So the city of Boston, if anybody's ever been out to Boston, how beautiful that city is. And we think about how big of a city Boston is, but their Boston City Police have a smaller jurisdiction that they police compared to East District, but they obviously have about 8 times the population we do. I'm from I'm from Evansville, Indiana. Shout out, I've got some family on here that is watching, and IMPD East District is not only larger and more populous than in Evansville, where I'm from. So we have more officers and we have more population just on East District alone. Next slide. This is the patrol officers that are assigned to East District alone. We have about 210 sworn employees on East District. About 30 supervisors make up my staff here on East District. And then we have 180 sworn officers mixed between day shift, middle shift, late shift, our district detectives, and then our neighborhood impact section. And our neighborhood impact section is one of the initiatives that we put into place last year, and I'll discuss that. So, like I said, we have about 210 sworn police officers and 180 patrol officers. To give a little bit of perspective about that, East District alone, as far as our sworn numbers, is larger than most police departments in the entire state of Indiana. So obviously IMPD has the most police officers in the state of Indiana. And then from there, it will go between Fort Wayne, Evansville, the state police, and other smaller cities. But like I said, East District alone is probably one of the biggest police departments in the state of Indiana. And I'm so proud of my management team and our officers for the work they do day in and day out. So just wanted to throw those facts out there to give everybody a little bit of perspective on how big East District is. The one thing that I will say about the boundaries of East District, our officers usually are going from run to run. I will say East District is a very busy district as far as calls for service. It's pretty rare that our officers have downtime between runs, but when they do, I've encouraged them to do proactive policing, do community policing. You may see our officers out on foot patrols. You may see our officers doing traffic stops. You may see our officers sitting stationary in a parking lot or a business lot with their overhead lights on. That is by design. That is to ensure that our officers are out there in the community, that they are being seen, that they are visible, and they are a visible deterrent to violent and other crimes in our community. So I want to throw that out there so everybody knows kind of what our officers do in their downtime. All right, our current crime trends across East District, like the chief alluded to earlier in his opening, we are seeing an overall reduction in crime, not only on East District, but across the city. I don't put a big feather in our cap for that. In all honesty, we could have a really bad week or a really bad weekend, and we'd be having a different conversation with our media partners about what occurred. So right now on East District, we are trending down as far as the homicides that have occurred, the non-fatal shootings. Robberies are significantly down on East District, and burglaries are down as well. The one thing that is trending up is some of our property crimes. Our larcenies are starting to tick back up. Some of that is due to the weather. People are keeping their doors unlocked to keep their doors from freezing. Obviously, in this cold time and with all the freezing rain that we've had, we do see an uptick in larcenies just because people will keep their car doors unlocked to prevent them from freezing. Same thing goes with auto thefts. Every year we talk about don't leave your car running to warm it up. And inevitably we have a large increase in stolen cars in January, February, and sometimes into March. So that's certainly a concern of ours, and that's why we have seen auto thefts up in our colder months. And we have a slight increase. I believe we are up one arson this year. If anybody has any questions on arson, I should have an arson detective joining us on this call today for any specific questions. So what did we do last year as far as East District? Overall crime was down. We were down about 9% across the board on all reported Part 1 crimes to the FBI via our UCR reporting requirements. Like I talked about earlier, we implemented the Enhanced Community Safety Initiative, which refocused our traditional narcotics units and our flex team to concentrate on the drivers of violent crime on East District. And I will talk about what I mean by the drivers of violent crime. So we tried to put in some relevant pictures because it seems like people like pictures to show the results. This was the result of a search warrant that our proactive teams did. You can see they took several handguns, a rifle, and a large quantity of illegal drugs off the street in just one incident last year. And that was one of many that I will say that their teams do a fantastic job. We targeted enforcement of known crime contributors and those possessing illegal firearms. I don't shy away from the term targeted. For those of you that have heard me talk publicly, I use that term directly because we are targeting known criminals in our community. However, the one thing that I am not interested in, I want to make it crystal clear, I am not interested on East District in casting out a wide net and trying to see what we can get. Sometimes in policing, there's a philosophy that if we flood an area, then we will gain compliance, when in fact, sometimes, depending on our areas where we concentrate those police resources, we're actually making a negative impact as far as our communication and our relationships with the citizens in that community. So it's not a position of mine to go out and flood a neighborhood with police officers to do traffic stops and stop those individuals that are simply trying to go to work, to make a living, to provide for their families, contribute to the tax base, and quite frankly, do everything that we would ask an individual to do to help this great city. So you will, in fact, see us targeting those criminals that are illegally possessing firearms, creating havoc in our neighborhoods, and quite frankly, pulling triggers and causing all the violence in our neighborhoods. As you can see, we arrested shooting suspects, robbers, burglars, drug dealers. The one thing that I am proud of is we've increased our referrals to our federal partners, which lead to an increased federal charges. So it's no secret that at times our police officers are encountering multiple time felons in possession of handguns. And when our officers do a good job of taking them into custody and finding them in possession of illegal firearms, we have a mechanism here on IPD to work with our federal partners to see if the U.S. Attorney's Office will adopt that case. And oftentimes when that defendant meets the criteria for the U.S. Attorney's Office, they will adopt that case, and they traditionally get significant federal time for those convictions. So it's a great partnership that we have, not only on IMPD, but it is one mechanism that we have used to put the worst of the worst in prison for a long time. I will say that our partners at the prosecutor's office screen every one of those cases as well. And it is a true partnership in the sense that if we believe that case is more, that individual could get more time on the federal side of things than what the state laws will allow us to do, then we normally will, or the prosecutor's office will work with us to hand that case over to the federal side. So don't want anyone to think that we're not working with the prosecutor's office. We just leverage the laws to our advantage, especially when we're dealing with career armed felons and those individuals that just will not follow society's laws. We continued our community outreach. We expanded our police community partnerships. Like I said, we did that as best as we could, even though some of the COVID restrictions were in place last year. And again, here's another example of a search warrant that was served where our officers located drugs, firearms, and money, and were able to put a successful case against armed felons in jail. Like I said, the philosophy and strategy of IMPD East District is a beat policing model. IMPD is going, or has went, to a beat policing model rather than a zone policing model. It allows officers to patrol in a smaller geographical beat rather than a larger police zone. Every officer is expected to do his or her part on East District. So we have street officers, we have detectives, we have gun detectives, and we have individuals that are simply going after drug dealers, trigger pullers, and armed career felons, like I talked about earlier. Innovation, proactivity, and teamwork are strongly encouraged. Every day, my strategic intelligence officer puts together a report, a patrol plan, and an overview of the previous 24 hours of crime that occurred on East District. And that information is filtered down to the patrol officers that are working those individual beats, so they are made aware of known crime contributors and those individuals that may be a threat to their safety and the safety of the community. So our officers can target those individuals and try to create a safer community. Our goals are achieved through working smarter and harder combined with relentless follow-up. So if we have an incident that occurs, you can be rest assured that East District detectives and quite frankly, the detectives across the city all do a wonderful job of following up and working together with information sharing, intelligence, and trying to go after those individuals that are committing crimes in our neighborhoods. Again, we target persons, places, and behaviors, and I'll go into that here in a minute. And last but not least, our community is absolutely critical in the success of East District. We cannot do this alone. The community is the eyes and ears of the city of Indianapolis, and we really encourage those people that are aware of criminal information, that witness criminal activities. If they see something, please say something. And one of the ways that we can do that is anonymously through Crime Stoppers. 317-626-TIPS is always a great way to pass information along. And that information is 100% anonymous. When those tips come in to myself and other detectives on IMPD, I can assure you that no identifying information is ever included on those tips. So there is no way for me to know who submitted those. I don't get IP addresses. I don't get email addresses. I don't get phone numbers. I don't get anything. And that is a great way for people to share information to the police, especially if they want to remain 100% anonymous. Like I said before, East District is focusing on persons, places, and behaviors. You can see those individuals that we target as far as persons, those locations where crime occurs, and the behaviors that are getting the attention of the police resources. I was just notified. I hope I gave the Crime Stoppers number out 262-TIPS, 317-262-TIPS, TIPS. So our 2022 priorities and initiatives on East District, very similar to the priorities and the initiatives going on across the city. While East District sees a fair share of crime calls and calls for services, the other service districts do as well. So these are shared priorities and shared initiatives across the board for IMPD. We'll continue to see the decrease of homicides and non-fatal shootings, work with other city agencies and private partners to increase quality of life, and address ongoing violence on the district. Obviously, we are working with our city partners, the Office of Public Safety and Health, Director Rodriguez, her staff do a wonderful job of partnering with us and doing everything they can to work with IMPD and other people to stop the violence across the city. We're continuing to foster the strong positive relationships we have in the community. We're also going to resume in-person community meetings, events, and partnerships coming out of this COVID-19 pandemic. At least fingers crossed that we're coming out of this pandemic. The data's looking good. We are starting to roll back some of our COVID restrictions here on IMPD, and some of those will see us on IMPD having a much public-facing and forward-facing stance on IMPD. Technology. This is obviously near and dear to the residents on East District. Early last week, there was talk about the RFI, the request for information that was released by IMPD and the city of Indianapolis on a gunshot detection system. That information is due tomorrow, March 1st. And I was told that the pilot project is going to be here on East District. So public safety cameras and automated license plate readers will also be deployed in the area to ensure appropriate crime prevention and policing strategies are utilized. I will tell you the public safety crime cameras and the plate readers have been absolutely instrumental in solving crime across the city. It is great technology. I'm so happy that we have the money to invest in that technology. And I look forward to getting as much of that technology as we can on East District. I will try to leverage as many as we can, but please understand that we do have 5 other service districts besides East District. And knowing my colleagues like I do, the commanders of the other districts are fighting hard for this technology to come into their community as well. But I will say, and I'm sure I'll get more questions on the gunshot detection system, but I will say that the 10th and rural area and the Nesco area were picked on purpose. And we use data and police runs and other anecdotal evidence and complaints and input from the community to put that technology in that neighborhood. And we look forward to hopefully introducing this technology into other neighborhoods across the city of Indianapolis. Give a shout out to our community public safety camera program. You may have heard it called B-Link. For more information, visit blinkindy.org. B-Link allows private businesses and private homeowners to integrate their security cameras into our real-time crime center. We have access to those cameras, and it allows us to, quite frankly, broaden our eye in the sky to look at real time and sometimes go back and look at historical incidents that may have occurred. So this is an excellent partnership that we have in the city of Indianapolis. A big shout out to Deputy Chief Kendale Adams. He was really instrumental in putting this out across the city, and he continues to be the champion of this across IMPD. So we have several businesses here on East District that have joined this program, and they have linked their private security cameras on their property to our incident analysis center, and we can have some of that information in real time if a crime occurs in that particular location, or if we know that a vehicle may have fled from a scene at another location and they took the road near that business, we can go back and look at those historical camera footage to see if we can get a picture of the car or some more information. So can't tout this enough. For more information, like I said, please visit blinkindy.org. It's at the bottom of this slide for more information. Recruiting. Obviously, it's no secret that the police department and police departments across the nation are having problems recruiting. So we have upped the ante. Our pay, for the most part, is the best in the state of Indiana. We have a great tax base here in the city of Indianapolis, and we try to use our pay and benefits to attract top talent to the city of Indianapolis. And the only way to make that happen is for referrals and the community's involvement to get us the officers that they want to see policing their community involved in our hiring process. So coming up on March 12th, we are doing a one-day testing for the written test, the physical test, and oral interviews. Traditionally, those 3 tests would be on 3 separate days, 2 separate days. There would be months spaced out between the 2. But we need officers right away. So our recruiting unit, our HR unit, and our training academy has carved out time to ensure that we are trying to get as many applicants as we can for the next recruit class. And we quite honestly, we beg the community to submit names, talk to people about becoming a police officer, guide them to IMPD, and let's do our best to get the best talent we can to IMPD. There's a $5,000 signing bonus to New recruits and lateral officers, and our pay after 24 months is $75,000. It's a very dangerous job. And last night showed how dangerous this job can be. But we do offer a very, very competitive pay across the state of Indiana. And like I said, we're just simply looking for the top talent in the region and the state, quite frankly, around the nation, if we can. So if the community can help us with that, we would certainly appreciate that. And please visit our recruiting homepage on indy.gov. Look at our Facebook posts, and more information is contained on those two sites. Two more slides. So contact information. Here is the contact information for East District. We always give out the emergency number. That's easy, 911. Non-emergency dispatch, 317-327-3811. For non-crimes in progress, for simple police reports, I usually tell people, hey, if your garbage can is stolen and you need a report to get it replaced, please call the non-emergency. A bit of a typo, that's on me. East District Headquarters phone number is 317-327-6200. Once again, 327-6200. Our East District Command Staff email are listed above. Happy to say Captain Mike Leeper is returning to East District in a few weeks. He will be my late TAC captain. So if you email him now, he may not reply for a few weeks for East District responses. Some other email addresses are listed below. Sergeant Tamar Harper and Steve Talley, who is our crime watch specialist. Obviously, they deal with quality of life and community relations and neighborhood groups. So please contact them if you have any problems in your neighborhood, and they will follow up on that. And last but not least, Shane, I think I did okay. It's time for questions. We still have 30 minutes left for questions. So hopefully I hit my marks.
Thanks, Commander. I want to read out a few comments we have from Councilwoman Jackson. Thank you, Chief, for your kind words and your leadership, Councilwoman Jackson. We appreciate you, East District, and all IMPD. From Turin, I have nothing but respect for officers in the field and sorrow for those who have suffered in the capacity of serving the community. The area surrounding my neighborhood has turned into a war zone, say in the area of 21st and German Church. There's been a lot of finger pointing between government officials and agencies that should be working together. On one hand, the community must be safe from those individuals, and those individuals who are at least are violent. At the same time, unless convicted of specific crimes, offenders return to the community. What specifically is being done between agencies and officials to curb gun violence in this area? I know you kind of touched on some of that, working with the prosecutor's office as well as the U.S. Attorney's office. Maybe reiterate a little bit about how that works, sir.
Yeah, was that a question for me, sir?
Yes. What specifically is being done to work for the agencies to work together to combat the gun violence?
Yeah, sorry about that. I had a little feedback. So obviously, East District does not operate alone. IMPD does not operate alone in the targeting of gun violence across the city. There are a number of city agencies that are involved in the prevention, the investigation, the prosecution, and ultimately the court case that moves forward. Like I said earlier, we work with the Office of Public Health and Safety. We work with our community groups. The new deputy director for OPHS, Tony Lopez, he's a good friend of East District, good friend of mine. He does an incredible job of working with those outside of the city community partners to engage them, to try to get them to work with the police department and work with the city for the prevention side. Obviously, there are those nonprofits that are getting grants that are for crime prevention. Like you said, we work with the prosecutor's office. We work with other entities within the city government to look at quality of life. A perfect example of that was we had a abandoned car lot at 10th in Arlington that the Irvington Neighborhood Association was concerned about. Not because they had people living on the lot who were homeless, it's because that location was known to have a large amount of stolen property and drug use, defecation, human waste, and quality of life issues. So rather than looking at it as a crime issue, we looked at it as a public health issue and engaged with our partners at the Department of Health to get a court order to get that place cleaned up and to get those individuals moved through other city services, through homelessness and other entities that are trying to help those that are either in transition between homes or homeless at the time. So quite honestly, it takes a village to address some of the crime issues that we have on East District. So there's a multitude of resources that we have at our disposal. It really just depends on the issue at hand. And like I said, my team and other teams across the city of Indianapolis will do their best to tackle the problem.
Next question is, when and where, you mentioned ShotSpotter, but, not specifically ShotSpotter, but I guess we should say gun detection, shot detection technology. When and where will that system go into place?
So the when is still to be determined. Like I said, the RFI for the vendors for gunshot detection systems is due by tomorrow. That information will then be examined by IMPD, city purchasing, and other city entities. I do know that the current planned location for the pilot for the gunshot detective system will be in the Nesco area east to Emerson, roughly between Washington Street to 21st Street. And then it will encompass Tech High School and that neighborhood just east of downtown Indianapolis.
Follow-up question to that, and some of these came in outside of the chat from community groups. Follow-up question to that was the same question regarding to cop in a box, the public safety cameras.
Yeah, so we have several of those. Those are only as good as the technology that's in place to have that camera, to have fiber on the city-owned poles. What I mean by that is the traffic lights and other infrastructure that the city has put in place. I do know that there are a number of cameras that have just been placed along 38th Street. I know that East District still has a technology meeting that was planned for earlier this year, but had to be postponed due to a surgery that I had to have and a recovery. And I see Chief Bailey just jumped on the call, and I'm not going to punt to him, but I do know he may have more information if he wants to chime in on that. Chief?
We received $9 million from the American Rescue Plan Act dollars that we are investing in technology, not just related to license plate readers, gunshot detection, test pilot, and public safety cameras, but other pieces of technology. They'll all be data-based and placed. Major intersections are ones that will be key for the public safety cameras. What we're trying to do is utilize a trio approach, not just gunshot detection in one area, but a gunshot detection paired with a public safety camera and LPR. We think the technologies work best when they work together. And it is just a test for gunshot detection. No matter which system you choose, it's very expensive. And then after the pilot, we're going to have discussions about whether or not we invest in a small area on another year or two basis until a decision has to be made by the council whether or not to fund the program full time. So we'll bring in a technology meeting to East District soon, where Commander Thomas will go more in depth about each individual piece of technology and the policies surrounding the use of those.
I will add, sorry, Shane. I will add that several years back, when I worked in our IT area for IPD and then IMPD, I was part of a group that went up to Chicago and looked at their gunshot detective system. And Chief Bailey is absolutely right. At the time, In Indianapolis, we did not have the infrastructure ready to hang cameras, to have license plate readers, and to have a gunshot detection system that would have all that data transported back either to an EOC, a central location at the City County building, or wherever we choose to bring that data back to. So I know the city has made strides in investing in technology. Like I said, they have put fiber along the major thoroughfares here in Indianapolis in order for us to leverage that fiber for future technology improvements across the city.
Thank you. Next question we had from the chat was citizens having difficulty reaching someone to discuss drugs and stolen property being moved into the neighborhood. She was directed to contact Crime Stoppers, which is anonymous, but she doesn't want to remain anonymous. She just wants to speak to somebody. What's the process? How would somebody like that in our community make contact with somebody at East District?
Yeah, great question. Obviously, if somebody wants to report crime, we want to hear about it first and foremost. The slide that I had up earlier, let me go back to my PowerPoint, and I can still share my screen. What I would ask that individual to do, if they want direct contact with someone from East District, I would reach out to Sergeant Tamar Harper. Her email address is listed here. Steve Talley is our Crime Watch specialist. His email address is listed there. You can also call district headquarters. Like I said, there is a slight typo. Our number is 317-327-6200, and ask to speak with a detective. Our detectives will take that information, see if it's a current case they're working or if it's something new. And we will get that complaint either addressed by our detective unit or addressed by our community relations team in order to get that quality of life complaint and that criminal complaint investigated for that individual.
Next question is, what are we doing as an agency or East District specifically to recruit persons of color and individuals from East District to be police officers?
Yeah, that's a great question. Our recruiting unit does a phenomenal job of getting out there and recruiting anybody, quite frankly, that meets our criteria to become a police officer. Obviously, diversity is key within IMPD, and it's key for IMPD East District. The communities that we serve on East District are predominantly communities of color, and I would hope that our recruiting is targeting those individuals of color so we can be representative of the community we serve. Fortunately, we cannot force people to take a test. We cannot take the test for them. It takes a little bit of follow-up. That's one thing that we have found, that our recruiters can do all they can in the world to get individuals to sign up, but it takes that individual to come out. And quite frankly, we've had conversations internal with the police department that recruiting has been more difficult over the past 2 years. Obviously, with the unrest that we saw downtown in Indianapolis and the unrest that we saw across the nation as a result of the George Floyd incident, we are having problems with recruiting, not only persons of color, but anybody for that matter. So what we're trying to do is build up that trust, interact with our community, and leverage those relationships to get individuals to sign up to join our fantastic police department. And more importantly, trying to get those individuals that live here in the city of Indianapolis to apply as well. I will tell you, our department is full of individuals that have had various experiences with a police officer growing up. I have a sergeant that works for me, and their interaction with the police department was very negative while they were growing up. And that was their guiding light to be the change in their community. So they signed up for the police department, and they perform an integral piece of what we're trying to accomplish out here on East District. But I can tell you that if you were to catch this individual one-on-one, they will tell you the challenges they had, and their opinions and attitudes about the police growing up were definitely not the same opinions that they have now that they're employed with us. So what I would say for those that are on the fence about applying, be the change that the community wants. I would encourage you to take a deep, hard look at trying to look past what experiences they may have had, and quite frankly, join the department, be part of that positive change and interaction, quite frankly, that the community is looking for.
Thank you, Commanders. We've got quite a few questions we want to try to get through if at all possible. One rapid fire question: is there a task force date for March?
I'll find out. We want to do that in person here at the district, so I think Sergeant Harper was defining a date. If you give me another question, I will look at my email real quick. I feel like she gave me a date. And
Absolutely. I'll give you one you can answer while you're looking that up. How do you bridge the gap between the community and the police?
It takes a mutual respect. It takes honesty. It takes transparency. It takes an understanding that while we may not always agree with the position of the other, there has to be a found respect and open-mindedness to have tough discussions to get past whatever roadblock or whatever thoughts that they may have about the police, and quite frankly, what the police have about the community. So that's one of the ways that we are trying to work on building that relationship with the community.
And Officer Williams Irvin put it in the chat, and then it just scrolled down. March 9th at 2 p.m. for task force. March 9th for 2 p.m. at 2 p.m. for the task force. Next question is, what is the city doing to promote Crime Watch, to empower people to take safety into their own hands in their neighborhoods? Why don't we use local TV, radio, ads?
Yeah, so I don't want to make excuses for anybody, but quite frankly, the COVID pandemic was one of the reasons why some of our in-person meeting and the creation of new Crime Watch programs hasn't been as at the forefront as we'd like them to be. Obviously, the best way to communicate is in person, to have those interactions in person. So we hope to bridge those communities that are thinking or on the fringes of becoming a Crime Watch. I hope to do that here within 2022. Like I said, Steve Talley is our representative for the Crime Watch program here on East District. His email address was up earlier, and I would encourage those individuals that live in our community that are interested in Crime Watch to reach out and contact him and get that process started.
This video will be posted on online, so if anybody needs that information, they can go back and watch the recording to get that information. When is community engagement? Events such as Coffee with a Cup, community roll calls, community days going to return?
So those are ongoing throughout the year. I will say that, last year with COVID, it would go up, it'd go down. We'd have breaks where we would have some public facing events. We did have 2 or 3 Coffee with the Cops last year. We did have a small community day here on East District. We partnered with North District and had it around Halloween. So for 2022, we are looking to return to in-person Coffee with the Cops, in-person meetings, task force meetings, and each district is now tentatively scheduling their community days. I am working with Sergeant Harper to schedule ours, but traditionally ours will be in the late summer or fall. So look forward to that announcement coming in the next couple of weeks.
I had a couple questions about accessibility for East District. What are the hours? What's the best way for somebody to make contact here at the facility?
Yeah. So we were actually open for most of 2022 for 2021 for walk-ins. Our usual front lobby hours are from about 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. We do have personnel stationed up there a little bit longer. However, they do lock the doors once it gets a little bit later to complete reports. So I would say for those individuals that are free during the traditional workday, they can come to East District 201 North Shadeland Avenue, door 1. That is our public facing lobby, and get what they need to get done here in person. Obviously, after hours, if they need a report or some type of interaction with an officer, that can be done through the non-emergency line or working with our community relations unit to set up meetings and or interactions with our officers. I will say one of the things that we did put on hold was the ride-along program. That was obvious for safety to prevent the transmission of COVID. And I don't have a date when that is going to be returned, but that is something that is being looked at internally. We just have to make sure that we have all of our health checks in place and the COVID numbers continue to decline before we open up that program again for our citizens.
Next question. When will the community or the criminal justice center be fully operational? When will the technology work? How's staffing? A lot of questions, I guess, that don't really pertain to us. Maybe you could explain why.
Yeah, I'm gonna look at Chief Bailey on here. Like you said, LT, we do not have management control of the Criminal Justice Center. We don't have control of the adult detention center, and we are partners with the Sheriff's Department, the Prosecutor's Office, and the courts. But those dates are not up to us. And we were given some tentative dates. However, those are rapidly approaching and or past, but I do not have an update on that. And I don't know if Chief Bailey is even authorized or if that really.
Yeah, I mean, the jail is up and running, and they're working through the issues that they have. And like us, they have staffing issues, so they're hiring as well, and they're doing the very best they can. And we're in constant contact with the sheriff's office to make sure that the needs not only of our department are met and the citizens are safe, but those in the other excluded cities and police departments in the county. The judges and the courts will be moving over in the next few months. I think that's kind of a fluid date at this point. And then there's still some other things that are still planned for that area out there, including a potential forensic services agency building and a new coroner's office. Those are all still kind of in the works and have to be built. So it's all still fluid right now. But like anything new, it's just going to take a little bit to get used to, but it's moving forward.
Next question is, what does the neighborhood impact section do?
Yeah, the neighborhood impact section is our community relations unit. We call them VRTs, our violence reduction teams, and then our VCTF, our violent crime task force. That section is headed by a lieutenant. Those groups are what I call my proactive groups. They specifically target gun offenders, those individuals that are committing violent crimes in our community, and those individuals that are pulling triggers, dealing drugs, and the violence that goes along with the drug trade here in the city of Indianapolis. So those officers that I had on my slide earlier are directly responsible for following up on community tips for violence, community tips for narcotics, and then doing the follow-ups on shots fired and non-fatal and homicides on East District.
Thanks, sir. Next question is, when is more data on aggravated assaults, burglaries, homicides, sexual assaults going to be reported in a more timely manner? And has IMPD hired a chief data officer?
Yeah, so crime data comes in a number of forms here within IMPD. When a police report is written, certain crimes are reported by the officer but then we have to verify and cross-check those reports to ensure that the crime that was reported was the actual crime that was committed. So we have preliminary data at our fingertips daily as district commanders on the crimes that are occurring in our neighborhoods. That's how we can get statistics out pretty quickly. But again, that's preliminary information. Every year, we are required to report to the FBI our UCR data, our uniform crime data. That is a mandatory reporting requirement. And that's where you get your true numbers from. So it takes a little bit to get down to those true numbers, but we have a pretty good idea of the crimes that are committed. I mean, when it comes to the top two, homicide and non-fatal shootings, we can tell you certainly the number of homicides we've had, as you know, LT, but the non-fatal shootings have a little bit of investigative arm to that because we talk internally sometimes, but the number of people that report just walking down the street and they get shot is sometimes staggering. But the reality is there was an actual targeted shooting and they're just not being truthful. So sometimes that data needs a little investigating, and that's why it takes us a little bit to report those true and accurate numbers.
What are three things, I guess it doesn't necessarily need to be three, but what are three things that members of our community can do to help us as a police department?
First and foremost, support. The greatest feeling in the world is when community members tell our officers face to face how much they're appreciated and thank us for a job that at times is thankless. That means a lot. I will say, unfortunately, when we have tragedy on our department like we saw last night, that respect and thankfulness shoots through the sky. And people want to buy our officers coffee and lunch, and that's great. Our officers are very humbled and try not to take advantage of that. But first and foremost, just the courtesy and the thankfulness. The second is information and communication. There is so much that is known in this community that, quite frankly, some people are afraid to tell it. Sometimes that's out of fear, and sometimes that's just out of a bad relationship they may have had with the police department before, and they're just not willing to give us that information. And last but not least is just doing what they can in their community to make that community a better place to live. There are so many active members in our community that are doing great things to improve the quality of life in their community. And I think that's what everybody needs to do across the city of Indianapolis. Own their little piece of their neighborhood and make it the best they can, and work with us, and we'll do our best to work with them to ensure that Indianapolis remains safe.
I'm going to go ahead and add a fourth one in here, and that's help us recruit. We have almost 200 openings right now for police officers. As Commander mentioned, there's a $5,000 signing bonus that people can get. After 2 years, you make $75,000. It's a pretty good salary, but it's also a rewarding career. And if we can get up to where we're the number 1,843 officers, we can do a lot of things with that to help the community. So help us recruit. Either sign up yourself, find somebody who's interested, send them our direction, and that'll help us as an agency. Commander, any closing comments before we toss it to the chief?
I'm looking at the participants on the chat, and I see a lot of familiar names, and I just want to thank everybody from the bottom of my heart for what they do for East District on a daily basis. I won't name them by name, but I wanted to acknowledge everybody that jumped on the call, that reaches out, that checks on us, that gives us advice, that prays for us, and quite frankly supports us at times when it may not be the popular thing to do. I see several of our city county councilors on here. Thank you for your support. I've met and talked with most of you individually, and I appreciate your support. They have a hard job to do as they balance and manage our city within the funds that we have. And last but not least, I just want the east side, Indianapolis, to be a safe place to work and live, raise a family. The one thing that is disheartening at times is the generic use of the term east side when it comes to crime. East District, we have our share of problems. We can't hide behind that. The statistics tell us that. But there are some wonderful people and wonderful places on East District that are just great to raise a family, great neighbors. And quite frankly, we just need to do our best to lift up the east side so we can have that economic development, so we can have that quality of life increase, and we can try to do our best to stop some of this violent crime so we don't have to have tough conversations with the community. And we can go about having those chatty and cordial conversations that we like to have. So hopefully, if I had a crystal ball, I would love for all that to happen. But we're doing our best day to day to ensure that happens.
Thank you, sir, Chief. Any close us out?
Yeah, so again, thank you all for participating. Commander, I did want to ask a question that I saw in the chat. Does East District carry any particular business hours of operation where the public can either have access to the East District or at least be able to call in? What would those hours be?
Yeah, so our civilian staff at our front desk come in at 7 a.m. and they work almost to 9 p.m. Our lobby hours are traditionally open between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. Sometimes they stay open a little bit later, especially as it stays light outside. Sometimes those lobby hours will be from 7 to 7. But if you come to East District to the front lobby between 7 and 5 or 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., the front door should be unlocked and you should have access to the building. And that's Monday through Friday.
Okay, and if it is locked, is there a doorbell system or an intercom system there?
No, I don't think there is. Obviously, they can pick up and call 317-327-6200, and that will ring the front desk.
Very good. Well, other than that, folks, like I said, your IMPD is working to be the best that it can be in the individual districts. I believe the comments that we see here and the questions help us to make it better. It's not perfect, but we are always striving to make sure that we are accessible to you and available to you. We, like anybody, wants to be able to live in a safe community. Each district has a little bit different flavor. Sometimes, many times, that's a good thing. But we're always striving to do our best. So we'll continue to do these things. I know there are some people that would rather have it in person, and I get that. That may be something that opens up in the future. But I do think that we're allowed to get a lot more people on when we do it this way. You may have seen in the chat that each district has a community day, and I believe it might have been Chief Bailey or may have been Chief Riddle. Someone put that in the chat there. So if you want to take a look at when those are going to happen, that's also a great opportunity to get to see the officers and the commanders and other staff that are here to serve you. So thank you again for being here. Thank you for all the comments. We praise community. We want to be your partners in everything we can so that we can all feel safe and happy in the city that we choose to call home. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and that concludes our town hall for the evening. Have a great night.